Right. So, hi guys. Welcome to our talk on Oh No, Now What? Unpacking Geopolitical Anxiety. So, we have Dr. Adrian here as well as Sabrina. Um, so before we dive into the topic today, just to share a bit more about Calm Collective. So, we are a mission driven organization that's on a mission to normalize mental health in Asia. So, we do that through our programs, talks, workshops, as well as training programs and content that you see on our social media as well. I am Chloris. I am the senior marketing executive here at Calm Collective, and we have an upcoming event, another LinkedIn Live, that is happening on this 9th of December, 3:30 to 5 p.m. Singapore time, and it's on healing the hustle, overcoming burnout with self-compassion. A topic that is very near and dear to Sabrina, and she'll be speaking on that LinkedIn Live as well, together with Dr. Ben. I think some of you guys who have been following us closely may have seen him on quite a few of our programs as well. So can I get both you, Dr. Adrian and Sabrina, to introduce yourselves and maybe share what's your intention for today?
Sure. Maybe I can start. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us at such a strange timing. This is the first time we've done a end of the day talk, Singapore time. So thank you for joining us live. I'm Sabrina. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Calm Collective Asia. We are a mission-driven organization that's normalizing mental health in Asia. I'm just reading it off Claris's background. Thank you very much. My intention for today is really to understand all these difficult feelings or strange feelings, really, that we've been feeling around the recent geopolitical events and changes. It's brought up a lot of confusing feelings for me, and I am hoping to understand them better and also to discover ways to better manage it, to share what I've done for myself, and also to hear from all of you, as well as Dr. Adrian here. And also Dr. Adrian, before I hand it over to him, he is my personal psychiatrist. I've seen him for several years now. I don't know how long, but you have my records. It's been a while. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Adrian to share about himself.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you for inviting me, Sabrina and Cloris, for this. I'm very excited to be here. I'll say a few things about myself. I'm Dr. Adrian Wang. A lot of people ask me whether it's Wang or Wang. Actually, it's Wang because it's Wang. But since I was a kid, everybody has called me Wang. It's not because of any Americanization. It's just a habit. So I respond to both. You can call me Adrian Wang, Adrian Wang, or Adrian. And that's me. So I'm a psychiatrist, which means I'm a medical doctor, but I specialize in psychological medicine. I've been in private practice now for 19 years. I'm here at Gleneagles Medical Center, where I'm streaming right out of my office. I'm a general psychiatrist, so I see the whole range of disorders, but I have an interest in mood disorders, anxiety, stress, depression, bipolar disorder. And I think this is an interesting topic because we live in strange times, right? Who would have expected a few years ago that COVID-19 would happen and all these wars and all these political things. So this adds to the burden of stress to many of my patients, both local as well as international. I'll be happy to share experiences, what I've learned and how we should cope. And I'll be happy to hear from the audience as well, to hear what's affecting them and what their thoughts are.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introduction. Just like you said, it's been a very weird time, challenging time. So in the recent years, we've seen an array of global shifts, like political tensions, such as ongoing conflicts in regions like Eastern Europe as well as the Middle East, economic uncertainties. I'm sure we are all experiencing and feeling like the effects of rising costs, and as well as like financial insecurities, as well as like social issues, such as climate change, maybe perhaps gender and racial equality, and also even the rise of AI and how much is actually contributing to all the aforementioned changes. So these changes can have a ripple effect, impacting not just national, but as well as like global sentiments. and it's contributing to what we describe as geopolitical anxiety. And I will get Dr. Adrian to explain more about what exactly it is. To help paint, maybe it won't paint a full picture for you guys, but to give you an idea of what this is causing, the different generations, different professions, and everyone across like different borders. So according to a study done by Deloitte, their global Gen Z and millennial study in 2024, so 40% of Gen Zs and 35% of millennials say that they feel stressed and anxious all or most of the time, and financial concern being the top contributing factor to their stress and anxiety. Separately, if we're going to talk about those aged 16 to 25, so mainly Gen Zs, a global study found that 80% of them will worry about climate crises, and they've expressed feelings of sadness, anxiety, anger, and even powerlessness. And there's another report done by the Morning Consult in 2023. A significant number of parents of Gen Alphas, so Gen Alphas, the generation below Gen Zs, 37% of these parents believe that these kids' mental health is worse than theirs when they were at the same age. And on the topic of like AI, there's a report on perceptions of AI in the workplace. So this is a survey that's done in APAC. 53.5% of these workers surveyed are worried that AI might replace their jobs, with Gen Zs feeling the most anxious about job security. Yeah, so I've been mentioning like the various generations, so I just want to highlight that I'm a Gen Z here, Sabrina, a millennial. Yeah, and Dr.
Dr. Adrian
Adrian.
a bit older.
I'm Gen X and Gen Z are my children. That's how old I am.
Yeah, so I think we'll be able to cover quite a various various perspectives here today. So while we are based in Singapore, this program is open to all globally, and we recognize that the diversity of our audience spanning across different countries, different continents, and each of us are experiencing the changes in our own unique ways. So I'm sure some of you are feeling anxious. I myself, to be frank, I'm not sure what I'm feeling at all. Not sure how to view the world that is changing so quickly. Yeah. So before we dive deeper into the discussion, I just want to make a very important distinction. So today's discussion is not about politics. We are not here to take sides or discuss political viewpoints, but more so we are here to understand geopolitical anxiety. What are all these changes doing to our mental health? And let's explore the different ways to manage the stress while remaining informed. So to set some ground rules and ensure that this is a safe space for productive conversation, y'all can type in the chat and comment in the chat. So let's all treat each other with kindness and respect. Let's be respectful with your comments and your questions. Let's also listen with compassion and curiosity. So let's allow space for different perspectives, learn from each other's experiences and insights, as well as try to keep the discussion centered on mental health and well-being that is related to all these changes that we're experiencing, and not so much on the politics that are driving these changes. Right, so first question to Dr. Adrian. So we've seen a rise in geopolitical anxiety. There's a lot of buzz on social media, and as we were talking about before we started, there's a lot of conversation with our friends and families. So what exactly is geopolitical anxiety, and what has contributed to this increase in anxiety?
Thank you, Floris. Like you said in the preface to your question, there are those statistics that you told us about. It sounds like all age groups, from teenagers to older people, they're affected by recent world events, and people are anxious. So geopolitical anxiety means uncertainty. When you don't know what the future holds and you worry that bad things will happen to you. Now, the definition of anxiety is when your fear is out of proportion to the real threat, to the danger. So when it affects you mentally, you worry, it affects your mood. When it affects you physically, you can't sleep, you can't eat. That's anxiety. So geopolitical anxiety, I think, refers to what's happening geographically in the world and politically in the situation in countries and among world leaders. I think here in Singapore, we are a bit sheltered. We live in a more orderly society, But even then, I do see people who are concerned about what's happening around the world, because Singapore, although we're small and we think we're quite orderly, we are vulnerable to changes in the broader region, both near us as well as further away. So there is still anxiety among people. They feel that they worry about their jobs, they worry about their future, they worry about their finances, their investments. So that's how the political anxiety affects people. So that's on a broad scope, but on a more micro view, I also see patients who like to quarrel and get angry with people because they hold such differing views about political situations, like the recent U.S. elections and probably our coming elections here in our own country, Singapore. And families and friendships have been ruined, because of this tension. Even in my chat group, among my friends and my schoolmates and my professional groups, people can express very strong views, and sometimes people don't know what the limits are. So all that just contributes to anxiety on a broader scale about your future, and on a smaller scale with your neighbor and your parents and your family. So that's my understanding of world events and geography and how it impacts our lives. Who would have thunk it, right? A few years ago. Yeah.
Oh my
Sabrina,
God.
your
Yeah,
thoughts?
no, I
Yeah.
was gonna add like who would have thunk it? I totally agree. Here we are like four years on from the pandemic. I did feel that the world kind of united in a way when COVID happened. But then, yeah, in the recent year or years, it's gotten incredibly or increasingly, I would say, divisive.
Mhm.
And I, f- I feel like a lot of this anxiety coming is being expressed in ways that are hurtful to ourselves and also hurtful to each other, right? And anxiety is one of the ways that it's being expressed right now. And on a personal level, I've observed amongst my own social circles, amongst the clients that we work with, amongst just acquaintances or people on social media, that these geopolitical events have really made such a big impact on our lives, and even more so when social media is amplifying what's going on and with the news. I've had to take a break from my my news feeds for a while. So yeah, this anxiety thing and all sorts of very strange and difficult emotions is very real.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. During the pandemic, we had a common enemy, right? COVID-19. We had to stick together and survive. Otherwise, we might die, right? So you're right. I think the world was more perhaps united. I mean, of course, there were people with strong views about vaccines and how COVID was, but generally, we wanted to stay alive, so we followed the rules. But with all these recent world events, I think people are more divisive and people have strong opinions of what's right, what's wrong. But I think one way of coping and one way we should behave is that we should remind ourselves that, hey, actually, basically, we all want the same thing. It's for the common good. We want stability. We want to thrive. We want to grow. We may come from different angles, right? Whether you're right or left leaning, whether you're conservative or whether you're opposition or pro government, but we want the same things. So what you said, right? What Cloris said right at the start of this discussion, we should treat people with respect and dignity. We shouldn't assume that the other person is the enemy or being bad or trying to game the system. We all want the same thing. So maybe that's a good start point to remind ourselves that even though we have differing views, our end goals are the same.
I think, oh my God, so sorry.
It's okay.
That's okay, Cloris.
Yeah.
I'm also recovering from a cold. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, my voice is back. Yeah, I think Dr. Adrian, you have a very valid point. I think what we all really want for ourselves is the space to grow, peace, to thrive. But it's yeah, but we all come from we all have our different perspectives and what we prioritize, and perhaps that is why that there is this difference in like viewpoints and what is quote unquote right and what's like wrong. Yeah, but I think let's dive a bit deeper into like the geopolitical anxiety itself. So how, can you share a bit more about like how the anxiety manifests in one's daily life? So like, are there any like signs that people might not recognize immediately, or like is there a difference from like general anxiety?
I don't think there are any specific markers or indicators to show there's geopolitical anxiety. Anxiety can manifest in any form. In fact, some people don't even know they're anxious. I was just having a conversation with a patient's husband today, and he was explaining to me that he had gone to the A&E 3 times in the last few weeks with feelings of chest tightness, breathlessness. He didn't even realize it was a panic attack. It wasn't geopolitical anxiety. He was just overwhelmed and burned out with his work. But anxiety can manifest in ways that we don't even realize. So I think it's important for, from a mental health perspective to take stock. And sometimes it's also good to hear from people who know us best, our observers, our spouse, our partners, our families. They can sense that when we're cranky, when we're grumpy, when we're tired, when we're stressed out. So anxiety can be manifest in any form. Geopolitical anxiety, like I said in my opening statements, I think one way that's perhaps unique to this is just conflict. People just get on each other's nerves. They just cannot take it. In one of the chat groups leading to the U.S. elections, somebody made a joke, and I just followed up on the joke. It was clearly a joke. Within 30 seconds, I got a call from another doctor. It was a doctor's chat group. Say, hey, Adrian, you shouldn't say things like that. Clearly, my friend did not get that it was a joke, but it also made me aware that, hey, there are people who just don't get it. So sometimes anxiety just manifests as a conflict and tension between people. And, I don't know whether you think the same, Sabrina, whether you've experienced similar forms of, in your interactions with people. Yeah.
Yeah, you know that I have experienced anxiety, so I have my standby meds for it. So, um, yeah, I think what I've observed in myself, at least, is it's very true of what you said, Doc. Like, the physical symptoms or signs, right? Like that chest tightness. That's something I definitely experience. Besides that, I usually have digestive issues. So, when I feel like, oh, I can't really eat, I feel quite anxious. We can't really go down fully. So it comes up as digestive issues for me, as well as there are a lot of other signs, like one of the key signs for me is when I notice that I'm being more sensitive or irritable. It basically is a sign that I've got all these feelings that I'm upset about inside of me, and it's manifesting into something else. And I'm like, grr, but I'm angry at other people for it, right? Or I'm like if in more like classic anxiety terms, it's like, oh no, what will they think of me if I make this small mistake? It's like just blown out of proportion compared to when I'm in a calmer state. But I believe that, just also from talking to friends and people in our community, anxiety looks very different for every person as well. So it's, I think, very important for us to have that awareness of what that looks like for us, like what are our own signs and our own triggers when it comes to to managing anxiety, because I think it's a very common and human thing to experience.
Yeah, I tell people that anxiety is normal. It's perfectly legit to feel stressed out about things, your work, relationships. That's life, right? And with geopolitical anxiety, things that you read in the press, they can be very triggering. But it's how you deal, it's how it affects you and how you deal and cope with it that's important. So you can even get a panic attack. That's normal, but you need to have the strategies and steps to be able to bring your anxiety from here down to here. It's how you frame it, it's how you think it, and your strategies, from simple things like breathing and mindfulness to slightly more complex things like cognitive reframing and learning how to see it in the right light and right perspective.
I think you both like shared really insightful points, especially like I think as I was listening to you guys, and then I'm thinking about how I feel about this entire situation as well. Earlier I shared like I don't know. I really don't know what I feel about it. But then as I'm listening and then like thinking about the emotions that came up as I was like doing my research and preparing for this talk, I think perhaps it's not necessarily that I don't know, but it's more of like, okay, this is me like pushing back and like ignoring the feelings, because like it's a lot to take in, and it's like it seems like the world, as the more I read, the more the world feels like it's getting very bleak. Yeah, so perhaps it's not so much of don't know, but like not willing to face it. Yeah. I would also like to know maybe yeah, actually from you both, can you explain like individual coping, how individual coping mechanisms might differ when like dealing with prolonged uncertainty? So, you know, this whole geopolitical changes, it's quite like a long-term thing. We don't really necessarily see an end to it, versus like so sudden stressful events. Yeah, so okay, let me phrase my question. Can you explain how individual coping mechanisms might differ when dealing with prolonged uncertainty versus like sudden stressful events?
Shall I say a few things first, Sabrina? Yeah. So you're right. We're not dealing with an acute event like an argument with somebody, but it's a prolonged. So the problem with a prolonged stressor is that it feels like there's no end in sight. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. Every day you wake up, it's the same crap you got to deal with, right? And it can be very demoralizing and both mentally and emotionally fatiguing. You're tired and you burn out. Okay, so we need to know how to deal with this type of prolonged stress. Okay, I'll say some just general things, right? With general prolonged stress, the first thing is you got to take care of yourself. Okay, nobody's going to take care of you. You have to look after yourself. You have to sleep properly. You have to eat properly. You have to exercise. Okay, I know among many people, men, for example, culturally, we power through things, right? We can take it, but if you power through it, you will just, or you try to power through it, you'll just get more burned out. One sign of burnout is that the harder you try, the worse you feel. So some general comments I'll make is, okay, take care of yourself, make sure you get some sleep, make sure you sit back. You know, the oxygen mask theory, you got to look after yourself first before you can help the person next to you in the airplane. So that's general. But with geopolitical anxiety, I think the first thing you got to do is you got to know what triggers you, and you have to limit that. And that is often your news feed, your social media feed. Okay. So you have to turn off those notifications. You have to stop scrolling and checking your Facebook or your Instagram, or I'm a Facebook user, I'm Gen X. So, that sort of thing. You have to limit your social media use. You have to limit your news input, and then basically you're allowing your senses to rest, right? Your brain, your ears, everything just to rest. So if you, just like we tell our kids to do a digital detox, you got to do it for yourself first. So limit your triggers, and then then what I said earlier about framing your thoughts. We all want the same thing. We want world peace. We want the world to be a better place. So we don't get along, and they annoy me, but maybe they want the same thing too. So let's cut them some slack. So it's how you frame it. So those are the two broad principles. There are a few other things I can say, but maybe I'll ask Sabrina, maybe her thoughts on this, your views.
Sure. No, a really good point about sensory rest. Yeah, I think in this world that we live in now, when we're always glued to our devices, look, I have my phone here, right? Yeah, it's just really hard for us to turn away from endless information. And one of the things that I learned recently was this perspective on how we should consume information. So this was shared by the philosopher Yuval Noah Harari. I hope I'm saying his name right. He's the guy who wrote *Sapiens*, and he's got a new book on AI as well. And he was sharing about how we should consume information like how we consume food, right? So we should be consuming our information in moderation. We should choose a healthy diet by, being very mindful of what we let in, what we consume, and know when to take a break from it. right? So like there are reasons why people take fasts or take breaks from eating for a while as well. And there's a certain amount that each of us can take given our own biological makeup. So that's been a very helpful perspective that I've tried to implement with the way that I consume content, whether it's like any content, like whether it's news feed, whether it's like talking to people or friends. Sometimes friends also a bit, you know, have their own opinions that may be a bit different from mine. But even with like emails and anything. So anything to do with like that stimulates your senses. I think it's really important for us to approach everything in moderation so that it helps us to remain calm and not get so easily, riled up when we're not in a good state. So it's really about drawing boundaries and being aware of what your own limits are. And it's okay to test those limits. But the moment your limits are crossed, you just have to be mindful and aware enough to like, okay, oh, maybe I wasn't ready for that. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are really good points. In other words, we need to have a good sense of self-awareness, right? We need to have an internal radar that knows that when we are reaching our limits, and sometimes we don't know because we're just lost in our own thoughts, which is why peer support, having someone to talk to, is important. Right? And this sensory overstimulation, I think sometimes it's because we live in an echo chamber. Our social media feeds, our phones are listening to us. We know that, right? So,
Yes.
so I just get this reinforcing content on the views that I support and my thoughts, right? So you must be aware that we're in this echo chamber, and sometimes there's quite a bit of sensory overload. So there are a couple of things I want to bring up also. Anxiety means you're uncertain about the future and you feel that things are out of your control, right? So to overcome anxiety, one thing you got to do is try and regain a sense of control. We regain a sense of control firstly by doing the simple things. Slow down, right? Slow down your thoughts. Try and limit the things you're doing. Breathe slowly. Tell yourself it's not a crisis, at least not a crisis yet, right? Slow is what I always tell myself is this: slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? Do it smoothly, do it slowly. You're more efficient that way, right? So slow down your thoughts, but try to regain some sense of control. And in geopolitical anxiety, sometimes we feel that things are spiraling out of our control, right? Things are just not going the way we want, right? So sometimes there have been suggestions by people to like, okay, try to volunteer, try to do things. I'm not asking you to take a protest sign and go walk down the street and say, vote this person out or that person out. No, don't do that. But take some active steps so that you can feel that you are doing something and trying to control the situation. The other thing that I would say is peer support. And we've mentioned this before, right? We need to talk to people and we have to, you may be an introvert and you may not like or want to have too many friends, but it's good to have someone that you can bounce ideas off, right? And which is why we sometimes see a therapist and a counselor. Therapists and counselors do good work because they help you reframe. You don't necessarily have to see a counselor, but just talk to people. So to recap, you know, anxiety means we feel things out of control. Control things, slow down, right? Slow down. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? Slow down, limit things, do a digital detox, get peer support, right? And feel that you can control by things, by volunteering, by doing things. Just get active in some way. I'm not saying, like I said, go and do a protest march, but do small things to feel you're in control again. That's how you manage geopolitical anxiety.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Adrian, for so summing it all up so that we can all digest what you shared. But so we've kind of talked about managing geopolitical anxiety on an individual level, and then you also said reaching out to peers, talking about it, having that peer support. What about geopolitical anxiety in a community setting, like in a workplace setting? How would it manifest differently, as in a group setting, collectively? Maybe Seb, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very similar to what Dr. Adrian described in his WhatsApp group chat, right? Because that's a community in itself. And I think in any community, whether it's a workplace or a group of friends or school alumni or family, even, I know a lot of friends who are in families who have differing perspectives,
Yeah.
and that can be very hard. um, I think the way that it manifests is definitely, like there will be a lot of disagreements around um, different worldviews, different perspectives on, what's fact versus fiction, even, because the social media algorithms feed us what we want to hear, right? And it, with that reinforcement, it gives us a confidence that I am right because all of these things, right? And even when I look at my news feeds, I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, okay, it's always agreeing with me. So it's very hard to get, the differing viewpoints, if that's all you're going to see. So I think in a community setting, when it involves more than just yourself, whether even if, like, you might be with a partner or both boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, son, whatever, like, who might have a different view. I think it's just very important for us to approach every interaction and every conversation with curiosity. I think that we really need to start with curiosity and, as far as possible, an open mind. I think what's happening in the world today with, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of disappointment and frustration and all of this, right? Because it feels like the other side doesn't hear me. I think it all boils down to that. And the moment we approach our interactions with an open mind, maybe an open heart and curiosity, that helps us provide that safe space for people to actually share how they feel, what they believe. We don't have to impose our own, our own thoughts or our own judgments. We don't have to try to fix them. But once we hear them out, maybe for all I have very strong opinions, but maybe someone might show me a different perspective that I might, rethink my own opinions as well. So I think it takes a lot of patience. So the other thing I would also say is only proceed with caution also, and with self-awareness. Only do this when you feel ready to, and if you're not, it's okay. You don't have to engage, right? Like, yeah, you don't have to engage when you're not ready and if you're not comfortable. And to have such conversations takes a lot of tact, I would say. It's not easy. I disagree with, like, people in my life who I'm very close to. um, and it's really the closest people in your life that will really know how to poke you where it hurts. So yeah, I think that's my 2 cents. It's hard. It's hard, but we need to be mindful and self-aware. I think also recognize that, I think, Dr. Adrian, you're saying how we're all trying to work towards the same thing, just recognize our common humanity, see the other person, and remember that they too want a better world. They too they want a better life as well. But maybe we just have different views on how that can be achieved. And that's okay. But we are all working towards the same thing. So yeah, that's my take. Yeah.
Wow, that really like made me think about how I've been interacting with my dad when we talk about such issues. Uh, I think he's also quite like traditional in his ways of thinking, and I just yeah, I think that whole like what you said really made me think about like I should offer my dad the same kind of like compassion and listening ear as I do with like other people, and I recognize now that I maybe take it for granted, like take our relationship for granted, and like cannot see, like maybe blinded, cannot see like where he's coming from. but also knowing that he's experienced the world in a very different light, and therefore he has like a very different thinking around like what's going on. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Dr. Adrian, I think you wanted to say something just now.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to echo, and I agree. Well said, Sabrina. What those points you brought up were very valid and very true. I think that we should approach, when we're dealing with a community or people with a certain view, I think an open mind and a sense of curiosity that we have the same common goal. I think that's important. In other words, don't get defensive from the get-go, right? Keep an open mind, and I think that's important. Um, but I also want to bring up another point, and we were joking about this before we started this chat. And we were saying that, and one of the, I'm just reading the comments, and a user 2 minutes ago said that certain geopolitical events have been a great litmus test for my circle of friends. It's smaller now, so sometimes. In groups, whether it's a group of people at your workplace or in your community or online, a user group or a chat group that you're dealing with, sometimes a few individuals with strong words can sway an argument one way or the other, right? And then there's this herd mentality. People will just follow and then gang up against another group or another individual. So we must be careful. We should approach things with open mind. We should always try to understand, why are these people so angry? Why are they saying this to me? But if people are abusive, or people are racist, or people are unethical, then we draw a line. And like what we said at the beginning of our chat, we were just bantering. We said that, we don't need this crap. Then I'm out. Okay. So don't be a doormat. If people are bullying, then we walk away. But start with open mind.
Yeah, I just to add on, yeah, I think it's especially in groups, and I think that goes back to your question, Cloris, on communities, right? In a group, it's very easy to say to kind of find yourself in a us versus them situation, or a very like othering. It's very easy to like kind of other the person who is the odd man out, or the group of people who are the minority, right? It's very easy to, yeah, just bully them in a way, even though it's unintentional. So if you find yourself in that position where you are the minority, or being othered, or being bullied, whatever the situation is, I think that's also, yeah, just really important for us to draw that hard boundary, leave the situation safely if you can, and disengage. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I think the thing that we need to do for ourselves is that we have the responsibility to take care of ourselves first, and keep ourselves safe, and not just physically, emotionally, psychologically as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think also like on the whole herd mentality, and like them versus us. I also noticing, and I think both of you also mentioned just now earlier, like we are all in this like echo chamber, right? Like, so we keep seeing like the influx of like content created, whether it's by like official sources or just people voicing their opinions. I think it's important for us to be aware, like, are we subconsciously taking in people's judgment and viewpoints just by like reading the content? Like, are we just going like, yeah, I agree, or are we forming our own opinions based on facts? Yeah, so like I think what I'm trying to highlight here is like the importance of like critical thinking when we're interpreting not just news but like content and opinions of like other people, like avoiding any misinformation, or like how do we identify misinformation, disinformation, and possibly like biases. But with that said, we all we're all living in this world. We need to stay informed, or we want to like get involved. How do we balance between staying informed, getting involved, versus like maintaining like the well-being? I know you guys like said a lot on like setting boundaries, being more self-aware. Do you have any like tangible techniques to consuming the news without becoming overwhelmed?
I think what you brought up again, very valid point. And what I said earlier about anxiety is when we feel that we cannot control things, when there's uncertainty. So, one way to overcome or combat anxiety is to stay informed, right? So, you should always find out, like I said, find out both sides of the argument before we jump straight in emotionally. But it's also important to get our news sources from a balanced place lah. You know, we all have that uncle and auntie in our chat groups that's always sending us those YouTube videos about something or other, right? I'm sure you know people like that, and they're not getting the news from a balanced source. But why are they doing this? It's because they just hear one side of the story. So we have to stay informed. I think that was just what I wanted to chip in to say, and
Yeah.
read why, like okay, I mean, I'm not taking sides here, but with what's happened in the US election, right, everybody expected one side to win, but when it didn't happen, then in the post-mortem, like, hey, what did we miss here? What was, what was the information that was lacking? What did we not read on the Republican side? So that's an example of how we just need to stay informed, so we know what's happening. Your own personal intel has to be good enough. Yeah.
Oh, so difficult. It's so difficult these days, right? And yeah, uh, yeah. So I mean, I think in short, just check your sources. I remember like learning this in secondary one history class. Since then it's like, it's always around, okay, this is some information that I've received. Um, where did it come from? Who wrote it? Is this person or this news outlet credible? Basic thing, like I think simple things like that we can ask ourselves before we choose to believe or form our own judgments on something. So I think maybe in short, I think it helps to withhold judgment, maintain that curious, open mind, and yeah, do your research, as Dr. Adrian said. Clarice, what was your question again? And the other part is how do you balance being involved versus
Yeah,
staying informed,
staying
being
informed or
involved.
getting involved versus maintaining your own
Ah,
well-being.
okay, so the
Yeah.
other thing is that I've noticed a lot of social media accounts that have cropped up over various geopolitical events, taking one side or another.
Mm.
Um, yeah, those are really hard to see because there are very strong opinions and sometimes also accompanied with very graphics
Mm.
um, that are being shared, right? So that it can read so and seeing all of these things can really stir up a lot of emotions. And there are a lot of people who are just getting involved in the geopolitical landscape as a way to feel like perhaps they have some kind of control over what's going on in the world. And in fact, like with Calm Collective and how it started, that was my way to feel like I was in control of the pandemic. So I totally feel you if you've done something like that, but so like with Calm Collective, when the lockdown happened in Singapore, 1 week in, I was like, wow, mental health services were considered non-essential. Even to see like Dr. Adrian was like, hey, hush, hush, right? Yeah, okay, secrets out, kind of. But sorry, no, but like it was not highly encouraged to have any form of social interaction. Um, so yeah, I started Calm Collective, and look where it's led me today. So I think one thing I can learn from this journey, that I've learned actually from this journey, is that, how do you draw the boundary between making this a very personal thing to feel like you're in control of what's going on around you, versus how do I make sure that I can maintain my own sense of well-being, make sure I'm rested enough, make sure that I'm um, distanced as well enough so that I can remain sane, so that I can make sure I don't allow anxiety to take over, and and that can spiral into depression, into, for me, bipolar, like hypomania or whatever, which is, yeah, it's very easy to let it spiral out of control, and that can be very detrimental to one's mental health. And I would love to hear from Dr. Adrian as well, whether you've seen this amongst your clients, right? Like, yeah, like how have people reacted to such events, and how does that relate to their mental health?
Well, the very fact that we're having this discussion, this topic, means that it is a triggering topic, and people's mental health has been impacted by geopolitical events. And Cloris's question about how to find that balance, about between having your own views, holding on to what you believe is true, and dealing with mob mentality and others. Um, I think that again, it goes back to good self care. You just have to know where your limits are, and if your buttons are pushed, think about every time you have an argument with somebody close to you. The very next day, or sometimes not even the very next day, a few hours later, like, what were we arguing about? Was it really that important, right? So before it spirals out of control, I think we have to know that our buttons are being pushed, and we have to take a step back. I did say earlier in the conversation that we shouldn't be a doormat. We should not be a doormat and let people just push their opinions down our throat. But at the same time, I want to balance this with this comment. Hey, pick your battles, lah. If this is a fight not worth getting into, and like I said, I'm like 50 something years old already. Do I really want to get into a fight with this guy? Hey, I'm just gonna walk away. So so yeah, I guess it's self-care, and then even in a conflict situation, take a deep breath, walk away. I've learned, like one of the comments in the comment section said that, I'm sure the person was half joking and said that his or her circle of friends have become smaller. And it's true. I've learned, I was surprised by some of my friends' views about these geopolitical events, but I've learned to coexist with people because it's not really that important. At the end of the day, we want the same goal. And as long as you're not doing anything unethical, dishonest, and no one is being harmed, if you believe in that, whatever floats your boat, we're still friends, but not that close anymore, but still friends. Yeah. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is also basically there's a lot of need for like compassion and empathy, where we gotta put ourselves in their shoes, and hopefully others can put themselves in our shoes also. I want to bring up a point around like compassion fatigue, right? So I think like what we were talking about, like some of us, we have things that we want to advocate for, and we strongly advocate for. Yeah, how do we prevent that, like empathy and compassion fatigue?
Yeah, I can chip in here or chime in here. Yeah, for anyone who's like more sensitive in the world out there, I know there's a thing, around highly sensitive people. I'm probably one of them. Just reading the news, listening to a friend can get you feeling very like overwhelmed already. I know I feel that sometimes, because you're like, oh, I feel you so much, I'm with you. I'm feeling your feelings, and you can, it's very easy to take it on for yourself. So empathy fatigue is real. And from what I understand of compassion is that compassion actually takes empathy one step further by offering help, right? So when you think about sympathy as, oh, poor you, so sympathy is, oh, poor you, poor thing. Empathy is, I feel with you. Then compassion is, I feel for you, I feel with you. How can I help? I believe that compassion actually helps to move that empathy towards a more productive place rather than remaining there in those difficult, sad, emotional feelings, right? Yeah. So with compassion, the way that I've dealt with what's going on in the world is just really just remembering that, okay, there's someone who's hurting right now. There's something that really matters to me, and it sucks. What can I do about it? And I think another layer would be, okay, what can I do about it? Do I want to do anything about it even, right? Is that within my current capacity? And then I will pick my battles accordingly. And another part of, like, being able to work with this empathy fatigue and moving it into a more productive space is really to make sure that, yeah, I practice at self-care. It's always around, like, giving myself, it's like one for me, one for you. If I'm giving to myself, I'm also giving to you, so that this whole thing is sustainable. Because if you give, then there's nothing left for myself, right? I'll just be left with an empty tank. So I feel like that's been something that has been very core to the work that we do every day, because even at Calm Collective, we always get folks, coming forward, whether it's through an email or DM or in the events that we hold. We really have to hold space in a way that doesn't burn ourselves out. And I'm sure, yeah, I mean, Dr. Adrian would probably have some thoughts and tips as well, because you do that all the time. I've cried in your office many times.
Thanks, Sabrina. But no, actually, I thought when Cloris asked the question, I thought, Sabrina, you're the best person to answer this question, because you do great work. I have great admiration and respect for people like yourselves who forsake fame and fortune in the corporate world because you believe in a cause, right? So compassion fatigue is a real thing, and I think, Sabrina, you've done a great job. You've led this organization, you've organized all these things. I certainly couldn't do it. I don't have the skill set to put these things together. But yes, compassion fatigue is a thing, and you did say that it's important to remind ourselves that we're doing this for the greater good. But I like what you said about one for you, one for me. You have to take care of yourself. So if you can't help by yourself, you can't help other people. But people who do this work, my view is always, sometimes, I'm very Singaporean. I like to criticize. But I'm always reminded that before I criticize an organization doing something, we got to ask ourselves, hey, but what did I do? Did I give any money for this? And then I go and complain. So I shouldn't complain. I should be more compassionate to the caregivers. So I think we need to remind ourselves of that, because I haven't done anything yet. So people like Sabrina doing Calm Collective, even logging into this, it's free, right?
No, thanks for, and same to you. Thank you for
Yeah.
taking the time to be here. And no, I'm like, for me, my question is, how do you do it one-on-one? How do you do it one-on-one? Because I can imagine, like, in your office, like, you have a box of tissues right in front of you, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
there's
actually
one
in
right
front
there
of
on the shelf.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have so much tissue, and, like, clearly you're holding space for so many people. So how do you make sure that you are able to do this for 19 years?
Okay, let me share then. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about the practice of psychiatry. I've been in private practice for 19 years. Before that, I worked in a government hospital at IMH for 12 years. And one thing I miss working in a restructured hospital is I miss peer support and supervision. We checked on each other, right? In solo practice, I'm by myself. I have to check on myself. So it's a good question. Many people ask me how I do this and how I manage my stress. I have, over the years, learned to calibrate myself, I think, reasonably well. My cases, my timetable is really strict. I'm quite disciplined at starting and ending work on time. I definitely make time for my physical exercise. I ride a bicycle. I make time for some social groups of friends and my family, of course. So it's all about making sure that you have an outlet. In fact, when I see patients with anxiety, and whether it's general normal anxiety or geopolitical anxiety, one of the questions I ask is, what is your outlet? What is your coping mechanism? And you'll be surprised. Many people will say, it's like I asked them a question for the first time, they never thought about it. Watch Netflix law, or sleep law, and that's you have to really think of of a way to manage the stress. So the way I deal with it is I make sure that I compress everything into my workspace. When I'm out of it, I don't think about it. But if you ask me, do I get stressed? Have I laid up awake at night at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock thinking my work? The answer is yes. And I did that last night. Sometimes I'm thinking, hey, I got to get this done. I got that done. And I sometimes tell myself, this is my punishment for not being empathic enough, for being, this is probably how my patients feel. Sometimes I'm up at night at 2 o'clock wondering, I wonder which one of my patients also up at this time. So yeah, so I'm also human. I think all psychiatrists are also human, and sometimes it gets to us, but we try our best.
It sounds
We're all
like
human.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I was just like up late last night also. Yeah, thinking, couldn't sleep, and then yeah, maybe thinking about this topic, this conversation. Yeah, but it sounds like Dr. Adrian, it sounds like you have like a personal action plan to kind of help you like regain
I do.
control.
I have a personal
Yeah.
action plan. Yeah. And when that doesn't go well, my family tells me, you're too grumpy. Can you chill? And then, okay, then I have to dial it down. That's my personal action plan. And yeah, I didn't sleep well last night because I didn't follow my personal plan. I had hojicha latte at 9 o'clock. Even
Oh,
though
I
it's,
love.
I thought tea
Okay,
was
yes.
okay, hojicha, yeah, but caffeine, don't take caffeine after 9 o'clock. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ayo.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I had a visitor from overseas, so we went out for a coffee. Yeah.
No,
And
non-caffeinated.
yeah, yeah,
Non-caffeinated after
yeah,
3 p.m.
yeah,
For me at least.
yeah.
Yeah. I also think that, Dr. Adrian, you're so right in saying that sometimes when we ask like how do you cope with things, and people are just like, oh, I just watch Netflix. But that is such like a that is a very for lack of a better term, brain rot thing where you are not. It's not an activity that helps you become like aware of how you're feeling.
Well, let's not knock Netflix. I do watch. I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
get
yeah, yeah.
Netflix. I'm watching Arcane season 2 now. For those of you who play League of Legends, but I don't. But I watch Arcane. So um, yeah. So yeah. But you're right. We need to increase our repertoire of self managing skills. It's not just. I mean, I think Netflix is a good. So, but if you just keep going back to Netflix or watching, or scrolling TikTok, you got to do a bit more.
Yeah. Like
What do
where
you do, Flores, to take
what
care
Say
of
do I
again.
yourself?
do?
Oh, Chloris,
What do I
nice.
do?
Yeah.
I exercise. I have to at least like go to the gym or do something like basically move my body at least like once a week. How I take care of myself. I think my morning routine is quite important. So I gotta make sure that I have my skincare. That's like dedicated me time. Yeah, and then I make my own matcha, hojicha, or coffee in like the afternoon. Yeah, so I like, do the whole whisking thing. Yeah, that gives me like time to breathe. Yeah, but actually, I wanted to ask like where should one start when it comes to like building up their personal action plan, especially around this whole like geopolitical anxiety, and then like regaining their sense of control.
Well, if you ask me, I would try to identify the triggers first, and ask myself what's triggering me, and then the second thing is ask myself what is it affecting, what is it impacting my sleep? Is it affecting my mood? Is it affecting my job efficiency and productivity? So where is it coming from, and how is it hitting me, right? And I think we should start with the simple things. One of the simplest things to do is just sleep more, just catch up on your sleep, exercise more. Yeah, don't have to form strong views on how to give the world peace, achieve world peace, but start with the simple things. So my personal action plan basically is just a generic general plan. Right? I ask myself, okay, what's happening, Adrian? Why are you so stressed? Where's the stress coming from? Is it because you've got too much work? Is it because you have a difficult case? Then okay, well, how is it affecting you? Do I need to sleep more? And sometimes just doing the simple things, the next day I feel better. This geopolitical crisis thing, the main problem is this uncertainty. We don't, where is planet Earth headed for? Where are we going to, what's 2026, 2025? See, I'm getting ahead of myself. What's 2025 going to be like? We don't know, but we have to tell ourselves. I mean, part of managing anxiety is telling ourselves that no matter how bad it gets, I can cope. Even if it's a bad situation, I lost somebody, there was a divorce, I lost my job, but it's knowing that you have the resilience that and the skill set to manage from simple things like self-care to like, I know I can solve this problem. I can outlast the pain. I have the endurance. And part of therapy is teaching the person like, how can we build on this endurance that we keep going? So my personal action plan, broadly speaking, is identifying the triggers, writing it down, and then start with simple things. Your thoughts, Sabrina? Yeah, or Cloris?
Yeah, I think the very basic actions that I take when it comes to managing my mental health and also anxiety is, I think, from a physical health perspective that also supports mental health. Just get enough sleep. Make sure I don't drink my hoji chai at night. I try, and then so yeah, sleep is a very core component of my action plan. Um, if I'm well enough, exercising, making sure I stretch, do yoga, go on hikes. If I can, I go boxing as well. That really releases a lot of stress. Mentally, it helps a lot to write down what I'm worried about. So I find that when I'm overwhelmed, I journal and I have this like spreadsheet where I'm like, what am I worried about? What can I do about it? How important is this? How urgent is it? So that helps me to break down what's on my plate and what I'm worried about. Um, yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, lots of other things, but I would start with that.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I think journaling for me also um works really well. Well, not so much about like how I'm feeling, but more of like what went on throughout the day. And then like once I feel like I have the bandwidth, then I'll like review what I've written. Maybe like that could be like a week later. And then after that, like identify what were the things that were like possibly triggering me and making me feel sad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm just gonna add also. So in addition to seeing Dr. Adrian for my meds and like my health, I also go for therapy. So sometimes when I have more heavier things to unpack, I'll go see my therapist, and through therapy, it helps me to make sense of what I'm worried about, and also it also helps me to figure out some coping tools, whether it's my therapist teaching me something or I kind of like figure it out as we talk. So I think more often than we know, a lot of the answers are actually within ourselves. It's just that we need to find that safe space for us to let it float onto the surface. So whether it's therapy or even like a peer support group, the other day I attended Calm Circles, our own peer support group. I was like, I'm going to be a participant. I don't want to facilitate today. That was actually really helpful for me to also learn and remember some coping strategies that I have. And in that circle, shout out to my group if you were in there. I remembered that listening to music actually helps me to process my emotions as well.
The power of music. I make sure to like listen to music like every day. Yeah, but like on that note, on that note of like going to therapy and then like seeking help. Like at what point, I think this is a question for Dr. Adrian, like last question before we wrap up. I know we're running a bit over time. When should someone consider seeking help for their anxiety? How do they know what type of help? How do they decide, like, is it peer support, is it therapy, or is it like seeing a psychiatrist?
I get asked that question quite often. And like I said earlier in the chat, anxiety is a normal emotion, but anxiety becomes a disorder, or we call it clinical anxiety, if it starts to dominate your life. If it's starting to affect different or many areas of your life, you can't sleep, your appetite is affected, you're getting physical symptoms, you're getting palpitations, or mental symptoms, you're worrying all the time. So if it dominates your life and you're allowed to feel stressed for a day, couple of days, a weekend, maybe even a week, but anything that is longer than 2 to 4 weeks, 2 weeks, definitely if it's a month and it's impacting you, then you should seek help. But who should you go to first? Good question. I think it's great that we have all these. There are a whole bunch of mental health support groups, including Calm Collective, that you can reach out to. I'm sure there are people who can help answer some questions. Um, a good counselor, a good therapist is probably a good start. And a good counselor and a good therapist will be somebody who says, hey, you know what? I think it would help to you see a doctor as well. I'm a doctor, I'm a psychiatrist, and psychiatrists, we're not just pill pushers. I don't just prescribe medications. I try to do a little bit of therapy myself, but the best outcome is to combine therapy and medications if it's warranted. Seeing a doctor is just not, it's not just meds or medications. I usually try to come up with a treatment plan. And if that plan is just therapy, then I'll try to help you figure something out. So I'm like probably the last guy, but there are many layers. You can see a GP, you can see a therapist. Some people come and see me right from get go. You could do that too. You can see a psychiatrist, and a good psychiatrist say, okay, let's formulate a plan and then send you back to see the therapist. So wherever your entry point, a good practitioner will help you wherever you enter from.
Yeah, and we know, like, if you reach out to us, we can share some referrals. But on a case by case basis, just email us.
Yeah. You can email us. So our email is hello@calmcollective.asia. But okay, last question. What's one takeaway you'd like our audience to leave with? Because we gotta wrap up. Sabrina first.
Yeah, okay. I think as we're sharing our takeaways, audience, if you're still listening, we'd love to hear from you as well, what your takeaway has been from our chat. Just let us know what you've learned. Okay. Cloris, actually, if you have one, I'm still thinking. Or Doc, if you have a takeaway.
Sure, I can say something first. Yeah, my takeaway from this is that, our topic was geopolitical anxiety, and we did say that the world is changing. Who would have thought, who would have thunk that we would be here where we are, we would be at this point right now in 2024, going to 2025. My takeaway is that, we all write the story of our lives. It's not over yet. Every story has chapters, right? So you've got a stressful chapter, but it's okay. December 31st, you close that chapter. January 1st, you write a new chapter. Whether that journey is with a therapist or by yourself, you can learn to manage your anxiety and you will get there. And that's good mental health. That's what we should all do. Practice, right? Good mental and physical health. So my takeaway is that even though we live in uncertain times, we evolve, we mature. Our story isn't over yet, and go write the next new chapter of your life.
Aww.
I didn't just
Thank you.
Made that up.
Wow.
No, it's true. I think this is what I tell people, right? Your story's not over, and you get there.
Yeah. Oh. My short takeaway. Thank you so much. That's still sinking in. Short one. There's a lot of change and uncertainty happening, and that's the reason. That's a reason why people say that change is the only constant. Unfortunately, or fortunately for some, it's only gonna be even more constant moving forward, based on what we know. And I think the important thing for each of us is to really recognize our agency in our own lives and to do our best every day, whatever that looks like. Some days doing our best may be like laying on the sofa and crying, and another day it could be like, hey, rallying a whole troop of people to go for a peer support group. So just do our best each day, whatever that looks like, and I think we will be fine.
For me, I think it's a good reminder, to think about like the common humanity as much as there's a lot of like differences in opinions and perspective on like what's real, what's not, what's right, what's wrong. We all want the same thing, and approach every conversation, including the conversation with my father, with a lot more compassion and empathy. So that's my takeaway. Okay, I think we can wrap up now. So Yeah, if you guys are new to Calm Collective and you'd like to learn more, you can scan the QR code. It should bring you to our website. And if you want to experience our peer support circles, Calm circles, we will be having one in person. Please do join us if you have the time and if you're based in Singapore. It will be on the theme of managing burnout. So as we wrap up the year, we think we're reflecting on the year. We are closing up like work stuff. Are we taking care of ourselves? How do we find like the strategies to manage our stresses and prepare for the next year? Yep, so that's that. And a reminder that we do have another LinkedIn Live on the 9th of December, also on the topic of burnout. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm so sorry that we ran over time, but this has been a very like insightful, fruitful conversation with both Seb and Dr. Adrian.
Thank you, Cloris, and thanks, Dr. Adrian.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you.
And Boris, I enjoyed myself very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I will end the stream now. So bye.
Bye.